All right, we are talking about World War II and the road to World War II. The day before in lecture, we were talking about the causes that led up to the start of World War I. The first one was Americans' isolationism after World War I, and the America's mindset of we're not going to be concerned with what happens in the world. We did that once before, and because we did, it got us into war. A group of rich, money-hungry companies got us to go to war, and we don't want to do that again. That was the viewpoint of many post-World War I. Next, we had the U.S. disarmament. America, much like after we're up to World War I, had disarmed their military, and it left us vulnerable. The Americans were the creditor to the world after World War I, and people owed us money, and wars break out because of money. And there was a great deal of money that was owed to the United States, and we put pressure on the Allies, the French and the British. The British and the French then put pressure on Germany to repay, and tensions will rise because of that. There was numerous peace treaties made in the 1920s that turned out to be completely and utterly ineffective because the League of Nations, though signed by everyone in Europe, had very little effect because they didn't do anything when aggression started to break out. The Great Depression will then break out in the late 1920s, and the world, Europe and the United States, are immersed in this sickness called the Great Depression. I use the comparison of my yard needs to have the leaves raked up, but I have the flu. The chances of me raking those leaves, even though they should be raked up and put away and thrown out, is very unlikely because I'm sick with the flu and I just don't care. And that's what happens. The world is immersed in this Great Depression, and Germany will be very prone to listen to anyone that can get them out of this situation. And Japan is looking to become a world power, and their economy was in ruins in the 1920s, and they are looking. So people that come in with rather drastic ideas are listened to. And then we had the rise of totalitarian and fascist governments. These totalitarian regimes that had dictators and sought to expand the country's footprints. Japan, Italy, Germany, those guys are not stopped. And that's going to be another cause. Finally, in 1931, we left off here. So in 1931, Japan will invade Manchuria, China. And they looked to see if the United States was going to do anything. The League of Nations condemned the invasion. They had a bunch of speeches done. Everybody jumped up and down in the UN, but virtually nothing was done. Japan withdraws from the League of Nations. And then in 1937, they will attack again in Manchuria, China. And again, nothing will happen. In 1940, Japan will sign what's called the Tripartite Pact, or the Tri-Pact, and this is an alliance between Japan in Asia, Germany, and Italy in Europe. Now, Italy is going to join this because they feel like they've been left out. The spoils go to the victors, and though they were on the winning side after World War I, they didn't feel like they were given some of the things that they were asked for, and they were upset. And then the Great Depression will hit, and their economy will turn to mush, and fascism will rise, and Mussolini will deliver. He'll get the trains arriving on time in Italy. People will go back to work, and he's initially sought and thought of as a hero, and not even initially. I mean, he's in power for 7, 8 years, and he's loved in Italy. In 1935, Italy will invade Ethiopia and Africa. Again, the League of Nations makes a couple speeches, but nothing's done. And that was a key state that Italy had been looking for after World War I, and they're going to gain it. Next, America will even become more isolated because of the Great Depression, as I mentioned. In 33, 34, 35, when you can tell the tides of Europe are changing and Hitler is gaining power and Nazism and fascism is growing, and you're hearing the whispers, most politicians felt like, no, we're not going to get involved in this. We did this in World War I, and it cost us a great many lives. We're not doing it. Consequently, the neutrality acts that were signed by Congress that tried to do everything it could to not repeat the same mistakes that got us into World War I. So in 1935, we're going to prohibit the sales of any kind of military arms to any nation that's at war. So if two nations are at war, it was against federal law for us to sell any kinds of weapons to those nations. Next, in 36, we're going to prohibit loans or any kind of credit to a nation at war. Again, the thinking was from the doves. There are two types, doves and hawks. Doves are anti-war, or maybe I should say anti-military typically. Hawks are more prone to be pro-military. And the doves are saying, when we sold arms to Great Britain, those were used by Great Britain against Germany. That caused Germany to get mad at us, and then they'll sink the Lusitania because we're giving them arms, and then we give them all kinds of loans and credits. We give them all kinds of ships, and that causes us to have a dog in the fight, and that's going to cause us to get involved in war. So we're going to prohibit both of those. In 37, we're going to make any kind of good. Again, we can't sell you any kind of military goods, but any kind of good that you do buy from us, you must do it on a cash and carry basis. So if you want to buy medical supplies, if you want to buy just parts, food, and any kind of commodity like that, you have to pay for it. This will really, really handcuff America when it decides that we do need to get involved in the late 30s. And we see the rise of Hitler, and now we really are limited by law of what we can do. Roosevelt will see, oh my gosh, how do I get America and politicians to see that we have made a huge mistake? Finally, in 1936, we're going to get the taste of the first display of Hitler and Mussolini's military. In 1936, there was a civil war in Spain, and there's two groups. The one is the fascist. They were called the nationalists, and they were backed by the fascist groups of Italy and Germany. And then there was the Republican Democratic loyalist. The Republican Democratic Party was in power, and they went up against the nationalists. The United States doesn't get involved, but we, along with everybody else out there, is taking a look to see how's this going to look? What does warfare look post 20 years after World War I? You know, we have the airplane now. We have mechanized equipment that moves much faster than it did in World War I. Trench warfare should not be something that we have to get involved in because of tanks and because of planes. Italy will send its troops to help the nationalist and the leader of the Nationalist Party, a guy by the name of Franco, and Hitler sent his air force in to bomb the loyalists. And we're going to get a snapshot and a preview of the blitzkrieg that Hitler will use in World War II. And the precision bombing that he had just decimated France, and specifically the Basque Country, southern part of France. He just pummels it. And our military advisors who had been paying attention went back and said to Mr. Roosevelt, this is like nothing we've ever seen before. This is the equivalent of the machine gun in World War I. and we're way behind. We're in trouble. Both Mussolini and Hitler will use Spain, as mentioned here at the bottom, as the testing ground, and it will be an incredibly effective testing ground. All right, what does Germany do? Well, as I mentioned, Germany is in the midst of a depression, much worse than it was in the United States. And so in 1933, Germany is willing to just about do anything to get people back to work. This is an amazing economy and an amazing group of people with extraordinary accomplishments as a civilization. And in the 1930s, early 1930s, late 1920s, they don't have anything. They are literally on the brink of complete, utter disaster and chaos. So Hitler rises to power in 33, becomes chancellor of Germany, and right away, or not right away, but his first act will be in 1936 to go back and occupy the Rhineland. The Rhineland is the section of territory between France and Germany, and France said that that part will never be militarized, that it had to be demilitarized. And the first thing he's going to do is going to march into Rhineland and take it back with the military. And nobody does anything. We could have stopped Hitler right then and there. He doesn't have any, his military is small, but nobody has the stomach for war. Then in 38, Germany will invade Austria, and Austria was part of its allies in World War I. And he's going to continually go along the theme that the German people have to have the ability to expand. They have to have the right to grow. And he's going to preach that. And if you say something enough times, well, sometimes people will buy it. In addition to that, we have some weak leaders in Europe. The Prime Minister of England sought peace through appeasement. And the policy of appeasement is giving in to the aggressor in order to preserve peace. And being somewhat more in the hindsight now, you can look and say, you know, when you give in to a bully, the bully always wins. And I think Great Britain just simply did not have the stomach to go to war, and so they will do anything they can to keep away from being in war. And so he gives and gives and gives. He gives in on the Rhineland. He'll give in Austria. He'll give in the Sudetenland, and finally he's going to be forced to go to war, and then he's going to have to be replaced. It's a sense of pacifism, and the refusal to fight. Both Britain and France, it was, especially in France, they just don't care. The people had lost, 3 million to 5 million people. And the U.S. isolationism and the line of thinking in the U.S. is, we just don't care. So no one is minding the hen house. And here comes Hitler. And Hitler will then go into the Sudetenland, which is part of Czechoslovakia, to the south, and he'll take that. There'll be a conference. The world is now, suddenly seeing, my gosh, this guy keeps invading places. We better do something. So at the Munich conference, the major powers of Germany or of Europe were invited. It was Germany, France, Britain, Italy. And notice who was not invited to the conference. It was Czechoslovakia. So Czechoslovakia's country got invaded, but they weren't invited to the conference. And Germany and Hitler promises, you give me the Sudetenland, I will not do anything. I will not do anything. I will not do anything. Well, he does something. He takes it. And again, appeasement and pacifism. It bodes for the aggressor, the bully. In 39, he will take all of Czechoslovakia. And everyone thought at that point in time that, don't worry, we're going to be okay. Because to the east is the Soviet Union, and the communists and the fascists hate each other. Hitler hates, and Germany hates the Soviet Union or Russia, and Russia/Soviet Union, Russia being pre and post communism, and the Soviet Union being what they call the communists. They hate Germany. And these two will never get along, and there will be a war. And so we always had this ace in the hole waiting to be played. And suddenly, in August of 1939, the Non-Aggression Pact was signed between the fascist and the communist, and the world went, uh-oh, uh-oh, Hitler has nothing behind him now. And Hitler's fear of getting himself involved into a two-front war is now eliminated by making a treaty with Stalin. Stalin is afraid of Hitler. Stalin realizes his country is woefully behind Germany, and he realizes that of all the countries in Europe, the Soviet Union is probably the number one enemy to Germany. So both of them signed this agreement. Behind closed doors, there was a secret clause that said when Germany attacked Poland that both the Soviet Union and Germany would divide it up, and they'd both get a section of it. And on September 1st of 1939, Germany will invade Poland. That will cause Great Britain and France to, on September 3rd, to declare war on Germany. There's a test question. Who declared a war on who in World War II? Don't get tricked. It was Great Britain and France who finally decided to get a mitt and get in the ball game and go to war. But it won't be until Germany's military and Italy's military are at full strength and with a great deal of success. And look out, because here he comes. So those are the things that led up to World War II, and we will now be looking at the actual war in Europe next.